Okay. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We will do quick introductions in just a minute so you know who you're hearing from. But first, before we jump into that, I do want to cover just a couple of housekeeping issues. I mentioned already to people who joined us at the top of the hour that not to be surprised, we do have microphones off and we have cameras off for anybody who is attending the meeting outside of Dan and myself who are presenting here. However, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts, your comments. We want to hear your questions. So the best way to do that is to use that chat function. We have it there circled on the screen, but you'll see it at the very top ribbon of your screen. For most people, you'll see the chat function there. We will be monitoring that throughout this meeting. So please do submit any comments, questions through the chat function. We don't intend to do, a big, let's try to answer everything at the end, but we will have some time remaining and we will try to get through any quick questions that we can provide a short response to. We'll be happy to do that tonight. Anything that is a little more involved, please do share your name and your preferred contact information, and we'll make sure that the project team gets back to you in a very timely fashion with a response to any question that you might have. Or if you just want to talk to a member of the project team, that's also information that you can leave within the chat function for us. So with that, I will say an official welcome to this virtual public meeting for Link 101, which is a new project here in the area. So we're pretty excited to introduce folks to this project. We had an in-person meeting last night, had a lot of people there at Dillsboro Elementary School. So I know that this is a project that has been talked about for a very long time. And I know that there are people who are wondering where we are at this stage in the project, what to expect, what kind of timeline to expect. So those are all things that we hope will become much clearer to you within the next 30, 45 minutes here. Let's start with introductions since I've already done so much talking. So I'm Mindy Peterson. I'm the Public Involvement Director with Parsons. So Parsons is the lead consultant on this NDOT project. I'm joined by Dan Prevost, and he is the project manager for Parsons, leading the work as the consultant on this study. So Dan has a lot of information that he'll be sharing with us tonight. And you don't see all of their lovely faces, but we do have several folks with NDOT who are joining us this evening, including our project manager, Kyanna Wheeler. And I know that this is a really good session for them just to hear the information that's being shared and also keep an eye on that chat and what we're hearing as far as feedback from the folks who are taking the time to join us. So they are listening, they're watching that chat. We'll share all of those comments. All of those will be viewed and reviewed by the project team. And before we get started, I do want to give a big shout out and a thank you to John Bond. So I'm sure many people know John in the area. He's the head of the Switzerland County Economic Development Corporation, but John actually has some folks together at the Technology and Education Center there in Switzerland County, and he's hosting a bit of a watch party. So I'm not sure how entertaining will be for folks. I hope that we can provide at least information, if not entertainment, but he is hosting for folks who may not have been able to connect with us. So we very much appreciate that, John, and thank you for doing that this evening. Okay, so what can you expect with what we're going to talk about tonight? First of all, we really do want to provide an introduction to Link 101. That is, a new name, new term that we've just started using and rolling out. So we want to make sure that you have a good understanding when we talk about the Link 101 project of what we're talking about. And then we also want to talk about the process, because it is a process. This is a conversation, as we've said, that has been underway for a very long time now, but this is a new study. And we are really going to be focusing on what this project focuses on, what the process and procedure are, for that, what you can expect as far as timeline for the project, next steps, when you're going to be getting more information from us. So those are all things that we hope to provide a lot more detailed information for you this evening. And then Dan is going to provide some prompts for discussion. These are prompts that we provided to the folks who joined us last night in Dillsboro, and we had some really good conversations with people, both at the boards and with some interactive, exercises that we had with putting stickers on display boards and writing on roll plot maps, that sort of thing. But really, there are a lot of ways to share your comments, and we'll be talking about that very thoroughly. So this is a good chance to get information tonight, and then we'll be taking some time to talk about what are all the comment channels so you can digest that information, figure out what you want to share back with us, and get in touch with the project team. So to that end, we'll be talking about next steps. We'll let us know how to follow us and how to stay on top of what's happening with this project. So let's begin with the project area here and more about Link 101. You see the map. This is, of course, an NDOT project. What we are doing here is really taking a closer look at that improved State Road 101 connection, and that is between the Markland Dam and US 50. And when we talk about an improved connection there in a State Road 101 extension, whatever way, shape, form that takes, what we are anticipating is to provide more direct access to both I-71 and to US 50. So that's really the thrust of what this project is. And it is a large project area. So you can see the map there. We're shaded in for the project area, but we have Switzerland County, Ohio County, we have the southern portion of Dearborn County, and that eastern sliver there of Ripley County. So it is a very large project area. So we want to make sure that when we are coming to the public and sharing information, that we're getting that information to all of the right spots, and anything that you can do to facilitate that, please let us know. We're happy to come and talk to you. We're happy to find more spots to share project information. We have a project office that we'll be talking about. So a lot of things that we'll be doing a little bit of deeper dive on. For where we are in this project right now, this project, Link 101, is in the environmental and preliminary design stage. Now, one of the things that we'll be doing during this stage of the project is determining the purpose and need for Link 101. That's an important job. When you talk about the purpose and need, you're really talking about the why. Why is this project being pursued? Why are we taking a look at this? Why are we trying to figure out what needs to happen here? So that really boils down to addressing needs and best way to address. And Dan, again, will be providing much more information on that front. But after we develop that purpose and need and we start developing alternatives, we'll look at those alternatives and we'll really take a close look and analyze benefits, impacts, and cost. We'll do a side-by-side comparison. And eventually what will shake out of this is first a preferred alternative that we'll take to the public when we have a hearing. And then after that, later in the process, at the end of this process, we'll wind up with a selected alternative. Now, this is a process. I said that. So timeline, that's important. What you can expect is about 3 years. So we are anticipating in early 2026 is when we will have a selected alternative identified. And so that's important too, just to know what to expect. So when we talk about big picture, clearly, because of what I just said, there still is quite a lot of work to do. We're still early in the process. There's a lot of coordination involved here. So coordination throughout the project with local, state, federal officials. That input from the public is extremely important. So it was fantastic for us to be able to see a very large crowd last night, have some really good conversations, productive conversations, hear what some questions are that people have, some things that have carried over from the years that they're wondering how those factor in now. We want to help clarify things on that end. We know, of course, that Governor Holcomb announced in 2021, he announced a lot of funding here. So $200 million in funding for the project. And that's a big deal when you have dollars allocated and committed to a project, because that tells you that the momentum is there. And that is, of course, dollars that are committed. Part of those dollars will be going toward construction. When will construction start? We can't tell you right now. We'll have a timeline for construction that is going to be determined at the end of this study. So this study is a very important process, very deliberate in the work that we're doing here. Had a lot of people when we were having conversations last night who wanted to know, where are the routes? What are you talking about? What exists? And to be very honest with you, we do not have routes established at this point in time. And I know when we talked to people last night, there was sometimes a little bit of skepticism on that front when we said we don't have routes, but we don't. This is a new project with a clean slate. We know that there have been previous studies in the area. You see right here on the screen, one that NDOT did in 2003, a study that took a look at that limited north-south access and was taking a look at what's possible as far as alternatives. There were some alternatives that did shake out from that study, but that study ended because of a lack of funding, and it did not move to construction. So that's one of the big differentiators between that study that happened 20 years ago and this study, is that we do have a commitment of dollars there. So that does already exist. Also important to say, a lot of people were wondering, what does it look, what does that study look like, and what impact is it having on the work that you do here? Well, first of all, we want to be as an informed project team as we can possibly be. So we will take the information that was gathered and we'll take a very hard look at that information, but we are not starting with any routes or alternatives already on the table. Again, starting with a clean slate, listening to the public, listening to needs, and we're going to develop from there alternatives. And I think I saw a question quickly pop up, and we'll tackle those at the end, but somebody was asking about where to access this previous report, and we will have a link to that posted on our website. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But this is a good point for me to do a handoff to Dan, because he has a lot of information that is really going to focus on the work at hand and what you can expect to happen over the next 3 years. And so with that, I'm going to do the handoff, Dan, and let you pick up.
All right. Well, thanks, Mindy. So we really are at the kickoff phase of this project. From a public standpoint, we're holding meetings such as this, the public meeting last night. We're also meeting with stakeholder committees that we've formed for the project. We've launched a public project website, and we've also opened a project office, all to facilitate gathering input and addressing questions from the public. We're also gathering a lot of information. Some of that information is that those previous studies that have been done on the project before. Also local plans for the whole region. And we're starting to analyze a lot of that data. We're looking at data about traffic patterns and transportation needs, land use plans, about the local community, and as well as environmental resources within the project area. Just all to get a better picture of the place that we're working in and the needs in the corridors. So projects like Link 101 follow a very prescribed process. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the first step in that process is to establish what's called the project's purpose and need. And this is really the why of the project. Why is a project needed at this time? What are the transportation problems that we need to address? And ultimately, what are those desired outcomes? And it really forms the foundation of the entire project and decision-making process, because we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we've identified a solution that addresses the needs of the project. Now, one of the first things we've done is to identify a project area. And this is the area in which we'll be studying those needs, as well as looking for solutions. So for this project, we've defined the area as on the west, it's bounded by State Road 129, on the north by US 50, and on the east and south by the Ohio River. Now, for those who live or travel in the area, you're likely familiar with the access challenges created by some of the existing terrain and the transportation network in the project area. The steep slopes coming out of the Ohio River floodplain, as well as the Laffery Creek Valley, really create this challenging terrain. And the roadway network that exists today really reflects those challenges. Today, traveling from the Markland Dam up to US 50 requires a fairly circuitous route with lots of roads that have narrow lanes and low speed curves and steep grades. So what you see there in blue, lined out on the map there, is what we believe today is really the shortest and fastest route if you were going to try to go from the Markland Dam up to US 50. So, and just for just to clarify, in case you can't read the labels there, what we've identified there is if you come across the Markland Dam, you can imagine heading west on State Road 156, and then north on Markland Pike up to State Road 56, and then taking Cache Union up to 262, ultimately up to US 50. And that's obviously if you're headed up to the Dillsboro area. There's some other options if you're headed to other parts of US 50. But throughout that area and that route there, you see those narrow lanes, those tight curves that I've mentioned. It's a route that was really never designed to today's standards. It's also not very efficient. Anybody who's ever driven that route knows that it's about 18 miles as the crow flies, but it can take 40 minutes or longer to get from the Markland Dam up to US 50. And so it really makes that that route, as well as the rest of the network in this area, really makes it difficult to get anywhere within the project area, whether that's to your job or to school or to the store, those sorts of things. So as we look at the purpose and need, we've started to identify, a preliminary purpose and need. And a lot of that's based on previous studies of the area, the existing transportation data that we've already collected and started to analyze, our understanding of the project area, as well as feedback we've gotten from talking to folks in the project area. And that comes down to these five bullets listed on the screen. It has to do with that travel time and distance and just, difficulty in access between Markland Dam and US 50. We're also studying crash locations. So that's, we look through police reports for the last 5 years and identify those locations that have more crashes than, you might expect to occur. We're also looking at those, geometric deficiencies. That's those narrow lanes, the lack of shoulders, the steep grades that lead to some of the challenges in getting around. We've also identified a couple other needs, and we heard these loud and clear last night as well, having to do with the flooding of Lafayette Creek. Every crossing that crosses, every bridge across Lafayette Creek or the approach roads leading to that bridge, every single one of those is actually below the 100-year floodplain level or 100-year flood level. And what that means is if that, once we reach that 100-year flood level, essentially there's no route across Lafayette Creek through this project area. And so that, that creates not only an access problem while the water's high or, safety problem associated, folks trying to get across there. But you can also imagine, in case of an emergency, if you need to get either emergency services to your house or you need to get somewhere in an emergency, that creates a barrier. Likewise, the roads through this area were built in, through areas and in a way that they're located in slide-prone areas, and that's, locations you've all driven on them, I'm sure. Areas where the steep slopes right next to the road every once in a while result in slides that might not take a road out of service. Not only is there a safety issue with the actual slide occurring, but you've also then created an access problem for however long it takes to address that the damage to the road. So these are the needs that we've identified at this point, but we also want your input to help better define this need. Again, the whole point of the purpose and need is so that when we get to the end of the project, we can use it as a litmus test for those solutions that we've developed to make sure that we're addressing the needs. So with that, once we have that purpose and need clearly defined, we'll start to develop potential alternatives. And that's an iterative process. And it starts with very general routes. These are based on, our analysis of connection points that, things that should be connected or areas that, may need to be avoided, those sorts of things. Last night at the public meeting, we gave folks the opportunity to draw on maps and make suggestions of these routes. And so once we've gathered all those routes as well as, those that our team develops, we'll start to define them a little more. We'll also start to gather a lot more data. And so this is this kind of iterative process that as we narrow the list of routes down, we'll increase the design level a little bit, but we'll also be gathering more information and making sure that we're designing the most, effective and efficient route. And ultimately, we'll get down to a single alternative. And as Mindy mentioned, we call that the preferred alternative. And that's that alternative that we think best meets the purpose and need of the project. But then we'll take that out. We'll share that with folks and give them an opportunity to provide input. And I'll talk about that in just a minute here. So again, this is a very prescribed process. This slide kind of provides an overview of that process, as well as some of the general timeframes for it. So we're here in that first box that says purpose and need and early coordination. Again, we're really just defining the needs and making sure that we've got that firm foundation for development of the project. And that involves a lot of conversations with the public, with stakeholders and resource agencies. And then as we move into that next stage, we'll start, the more detailed evaluation of those routes and development of alternatives. And once we've got that preferred alternative, we'll publish a draft environmental document. And essentially, this is a big report documenting that entire process of developing and screening alternatives. And then at that point, we'll share that document out for everybody to review. We'll hold a public hearing. We'll be meeting with all those stakeholder groups. We'll be meeting with resource agencies. And at this point, we think that we'll be ready for that point about in the fall of 2024. So about 18 months or so from now. So at that point, we'll take all that input that we receive from from stakeholders, from the public, from the agencies, and determine if there are any revisions needed to that alternative or additional analysis that we need to do. And then once we've dotted all those I's and crossed all those T's, we'll publish a final environmental document. And only once that document is approved by the Federal Highway Administration can the project move into the final design and construction phases. And again, in terms of that, timeline for that construction, again, we'll have a much better idea of that once we get to that selected alternative. But I do also want to make sure that everybody knows that throughout this process, we're going to be talking to stakeholders and the public. So there's going to be lots of opportunities, both at these, kind of key milestones for folks to provide input, as well as throughout the process. Now, one thing I want to talk about that may be new for some folks is a term called environmental justice. Some folks may be familiar, but I want to define it a little bit and introduce it. So this really comes out of an early 90s executive order that says basically that no group of people should bear a disproportional share of the negative environmental consequences of a transportation investment. And so it identifies groups that, historically have been underserved by the transportation network, for instance. And it also calls on the DOTs to take steps to make sure that those groups have the opportunity to meaningfully engage in the project, to make sure that we are going to serve their needs as well. And so one of the things we've done so far, and we want your help with, is helping to identify those groups. So we've gone out and we've used some existing data sources. U.S. Census data is one of the primary sources to start to identify those areas. And what you see in the map there is our preliminary identification of a couple of those groups. In yellow there, you see the low-income populations. In that aqua blue is the areas of minority populations, and then in the dark green is areas that both are low income and minority. And I should clarify here that what we're doing here is we're comparing those populations, the number of folks that are low income or minority against this area. So you can imagine that in a place like downtown Indianapolis, the population looks very different. But in this project area, in these 4 counties, we're comparing against that that population and looking for those groups. So one of the things we want the public's help with is help in identifying these groups. And obviously we've got some data sources, but that doesn't always tell the whole story. Sometimes these groups can be more dispersed or don't really show up on in data. You can imagine, and I showed on the previous slide, some of those other groups we're looking for are even groups that are, just underserved by the transportation system sometimes. The elderly may have access issues, mobility issues. They may not have access to a car, or, folks with, disabilities in the same situation who have special needs. So we want to make sure we're identifying those folks. So I'd encourage you, if you are, if you're familiar with groups, or have contacts with agencies that work with groups that may be underserved by the transportation system, please let us know about those. And then speaking of feedback, we want your feedback throughout this process. We want to make sure that we understand those local needs. We want to make sure that as we identify opportunities that we're really addressing those concerns and areas of conflict. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the solutions that we come up with and that come out of this process reflect the needs and input of the community that the project is located in. So with that, I want to talk through a few of the questions that we're posing at this point, really. And just to be clear, we want your input again to make sure that this project is as beneficial to the local community as it can be. This is your community. You live here. You work here. And you travel these roads, so you know better than anyone what is needed in the community. And we also want to make sure we're reaching folks from across the project area. So while we certainly hope you'll provide input, we also hope you'll help us spread the word to your friends and neighbors so that they participate in the process. So I've got a couple questions that we want to ask, and some of them, some of these are very basic questions, but they help us better understand the needs in the area. So as I walk through these questions, I'd ask that you think about how you'd answer each of them, and then share that information with us. Mindy will talk a little bit more later about how you can do that, but lots of ways to do that. But I'll start out with it's kind of an easy one. It's a pretty simple question, but what are the biggest concerns that you have as you travel in this project area? What are those connection points, those point A's to point B's that that you travel today, or maybe don't travel because of the challenges that are in the transportation network? Where are those roadway conditions that that are either, challenging to get through, or, you feel unsafe, those narrow lanes, those sharp curves, those sorts of things. And again, where are those, are there places that of where there have been crashes that you think are the result of the existing roadway network? So those are the kind of things we're looking for. Again, these are, things that best. So please, we're hoping that you'll help us gather that information. Along those lines, what are the services that you need better connections to? Is it getting to work, or getting to shopping, or to medical services? Where are those places that you're going that currently you're challenged in getting there? And then, you can also think about just, what is your commute? Are you commuting primarily within the project area? Do you have a daily commute that takes you out of the project area? Those sorts of things. If you think through those trips that you make and think about those places where, the transportation, there's an opportunity to improve that trip. That's the kind of information we're looking for. And to that end, you can also think about when you go places, locally, where is that? Or when you do, travel more regionally, what do those trips look like? What improvements would really help you make those trips better? And then finally, we want to talk about function and fit. So obviously the transportation system provides a function. It gets people from point A to point B, and we want to make sure that that's happening safely and with efficiently. But we also want to make sure that we're aware, taking account for other modes of travel, whether that's biking or walking, or we're aware that in this, in parts of the project area, there are Amish populations that travel by horse and buggy or by bicycle. We want to make sure that we're accommodating that. We also want to talk about how does the roadway fit into the community. A roadway, not only provides, transportation connections, but it does have an effect on how the community feels, and how, you certainly want a roadway that fits with the community that folks want to see in their area. So these are the questions that we're posing. We were looking for feedback during this phase. And as I said, Mindy's going to talk more about how you can provide that input. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it back to her.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Okay. When we talk about next steps here, first of all, we want to talk about some of the work that we've been doing. So we do have several groups that we've started conversations with. This has been really kind of the launch month for getting information out, receiving that information. So we'll be doing a lot of homework after these conversations, but we have a community advisory committee that we met with just last week. That's from members and representatives of the community. So that includes representatives from community groups, school systems, large businesses, local entities, that we had several people join us last week. Really good conversation with those members of the Community Advisory Committee. We have another group that is called the Environmental Justice Working Group, and Dan talked about environmental justice and the issues that have the potential to affect low-income or minority populations. That's a very important focus. So for that working group, we really want to assemble representatives of groups who are working closely with those populations that Dan walked through. So if there are suggestions on that end, please do share any suggestions in the chat function if there are people who want to be connected with either of those groups. We also have a resource agency committee that we met with this week, just like the name implies. That's a group that fosters coordination at the state and federal level. So a lot of agencies involved there. Section 106 consulting parties, just one more group here. Really the focus there on any possible impacts to historic properties. We want to make sure that we are addressing those. And so if you have anybody who might want to join us for those conversations when we talk about potential impacts on historic properties, and if you know somebody who might want to serve as a consulting party, please do let us know. You can reach out to the project team. We'll talk about those contact channels. And we do want to make ourselves available. We know that people are just getting reacquainted with the project again, hearing about the work that's underway. So if you have a group that wants to hear from us, if you want to have us come out, talk more about the project, what to expect, we're happy to accommodate those presentations. And we will be meeting with the public at key milestones, making sure that information is shared. Just yesterday, we launched the project website and social media channels. So please do look to the website. It's provides a great resource for additional information. That is a live website that is updated throughout this project. So as we have more information to share with you, we'll be putting more information out there. That is link101corridor.com. We have social media channels, as I said, Twitter and Facebook, that also went live yesterday. It's an easy follow to follow us and make sure that you are on top of the latest information. And then we have a project office, which is not always the case with a project, but we do have that available in the area, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. So what to expect? Dan really walked through the timeline here, but there are a couple of things that I want to point out. We have already told you what to expect overall, and that's having that final environmental document in early 26. So I know that when you look at the calendar today and you see that 26 mark, there is a lot of time, but there is also, quite frankly, a lot of work to do. We'll do a lot of listening during that process. We'll be collecting a lot of information, data, doing a lot of analysis. So we want to be very transparent throughout that process. So when we release that draft environmental document that Dan referenced in fall of 24, you will see all of the work that we have done thus far. It will all be documented in a very thorough document that includes a lot of tables, charts. The information will be there for you, and it will be available to the public. At that time, we will also have a public hearing. It's a little bit different than a public meeting. When we have a hearing, we have a comment period where people can sign up. They'll have time to stand up, speak, share their thoughts. We will record each and every one of those comments that we receive during the hearing, and we will respond to all of those comments of substance between that draft document and the final environmental document. We will have a response to all of the comments that we have received, and that will be included. And a lot of times the feedback that we are receiving, that may result in some changes to alternative that has been out there. So you can also expect for us to react to the information that we're hearing. One more thing that I wanted to point out on the timeline here before we move along. This summer, we anticipate already getting together again, and we'll have another meeting. And I said to the people last night who were able to join us, I don't want you to come to this meeting and be frustrated by a lack of information. We don't have all of the details. We don't have routes right now because this is a new project that is beginning, and we are listening, and we are gathering information, and we are developing that purpose and need. And from all of the information that is coming in, we'll develop those alternatives. And so when we get together in the summer, that's when we'll give you an update on the work that's been underway. And we should have, there'll be fat lines on a map, but we will have some information that we can present to you this summer that will show you those alternatives developing, and we'll see more about those routes starting to take shape. So we'll have more information available then. As far as staying in touch with us and following our progress, there are lots of channels to do so. So we want to walk through some of those. I talked about the website already. If you haven't been to the website, link101corridor.com. Again, follow that. You'll find a lot of information available on the website, including already up there under project documents. You'll find all of the materials that we referenced at the public meeting last night. So we had several display boards. So you'll see those already on the website. We had a project handout that you can see, download, print out if you'd like to do so. You'll see a comment form, same thing. You can print that out. You can download it. You can return it to us. That's available on the website already. So you'll go to link101corridor.com, go to project documents, and you'll find all of the information from the public meeting last night. We also are recording this virtual meeting for people who maybe were not able to join us for the virtual meeting or the public meeting, and that recording will be posted on the website as well. And right there you see the channels that you can follow us on social media. I will encourage you, if you visit the website, do sign up for those email updates or text, whatever you prefer. You can do so very easily, and then you'll get the latest updates on the information. Okay, this is something that we only touched on last night, but we didn't have all of the information available yet. So you'll actually get more information and see more information coming out on Monday about this. But another thing that we wanted to do, because we have a very large project area here, is to make sure that we are making materials available to the public. And that is more so than just having a public meeting, and it's great to have a good turnout, but we want to make sure that people can find the information. So there are several locations you see here, the public library in Dillsboro or Ohio County, Switzerland County. We're also at the town hall in Dillsboro and Versailles, at Rising Sun City Building, and we're at the Chamber of Commerce in Dearborn County. So come Monday, this coming Monday, not yet, but come Monday, we will have materials set up in those locations where we'll have a stack of project handouts that will give you more information on the project. We'll have this comment form that we shared last night that I held up. On the back of it is what Dan referenced, where we have a map where please do let us know your thoughts. Let us know what we need to be thinking about. If you have some thoughts on what routes we should be considering, draw lines on that map, and you can return that comment form to us in several ways. At any of these 7 locations that are listed on the screen, we'll have a box right there set up with the project, with the comment form. So if you want to take the time, fill it out while you're there, that's more than fine. If you want to come back to any of those locations and drop off your comments, that's more than fine. I do want you to keep one date in mind, February 17th. We're not ever cutting off comments. We want to have those conversations, but we do want to connect all of the comments that we're receiving in connection with the public meetings and these initial launch meetings here. So February 17th is that date. So please do make sure that if you're filling out one of these comment forms, do return it to one of these sites, mail it to the project office. You'll be able to upload it on the website. You can drop it off at the project office, any number of ways to get that to us. And if you weren't able to capture all of those ways, you can give us a call at the project office as well. We're happy to share that information. And again, February 17th, and just a postmark by February 17th if you're mailing in your comments. Okay, that project office, we've talked about that a little bit. So this is important to let you know where you can find us. So some folks are there watching and listening to this meeting tonight, and that's at the Switzerland County Technology and Education Center. So the Link 101 office is right there on the 2nd floor. So if you take the steps or elevator, either way, when you come out of the corridor there, we're very close to where you're going to be dropped off from either the elevator or the steps. You'll see us there. You'll see some signage there. We are at the project office Monday and Wednesday from 10 until 3. If those times work for you, that's fantastic. If it doesn't work for you, we will find a time that will work for you, and we're happy to schedule some time by appointment, so you can give us a call to do so. We have a phone number that I hope is pretty easy for you to remember. This is a toll-free number. That's 844-LINK-101. So 844-LINK-101, you'll reach somebody. That project office is open 5 days a week. So not only the 2 days that the project office is open. And again, you can email us as well. You see the email address on the screen. And the project office is a good resource. We're going to have that, folks in there rotating on Mondays and Wednesdays. You'll find a variety of project team members. Dan's going to be spending quite a bit of time there. I'll be spending some time there. Joanne will be there on a regular basis. But the important thing to know is it's a resource. It's not a must. If you have information you want to share with us, use any of the channels I talked about. It doesn't have to be a face-to-face at the project office. That is just a resource for you to use if you want to have a face-to-face conversation. If you have some questions that you need to find answers to, you can come and visit us or set up a time to do so. And that's going to wrap us up on the presentation portion of this. And I do know that we have had several comments that have come through throughout the meeting. We have been watching those comments. We are recording those comments, recording them from the standpoint of we'll be noting all of those comments, and they will be associated with this comment period. There were a couple of things that I think that we can talk about in general terms. More specific questions, we will be getting back in touch with folks, but there were quite a few questions that I noted, Dan, that were on the $200 million cost estimate. And I think it's important to frame that to folks. That's not a cost estimate. Those are the dollars that have so far been allocated to this project. So there's no estimate because we don't know yet what this project is or what it looks like. So I'll let Dan touch a little bit more on that, but there were several questions on that side.
Yeah, as Mindy said, that's just a dollar amount that the governor has allocated, and that needs to carry. That's money that's there to develop the project from today all the way up to construction. And to be honest, we don't know whether that $200 million will cover the entire cost, or it might be more than what is needed. We just don't know that today. But that, out of that $200 million does need to come all the, development, design, ultimately, if the project does move forward, any property acquisition would need to come out of that, as well as utility relocations, and then ultimately construction. So there's a lot of things that need to go into that. And, honestly, we don't know what that number is today. I also saw, Mindy, I'll jump in. I saw a number of questions about, existing roads and whether those could be, could serve the needs. And that's absolutely part of this process. We are looking at, we will look at routes that just are, involve making upgrades to existing roads. We got a lot of comments last night about, maybe improvements to State Road 129 would be would solve or, provide that level of service that this area needs. Those are exactly the things that we will be looking at. So yes, those are all in the mix.
And one thing, because when we get together, it is a good time to share information, hear information directly from the project team. So I know Steve had a comment when you were talking about the fastest route, Dan, and his comment was, it looks like a route has been selected. And what I think you were trying to demonstrate there is what is existing. So I want to give you a chance to clarify what you were explaining with that slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that slide, really just showed, if you were, what is that, shortest and fastest route today? If you were going from the Markland Dam up to US 50 in that Dillsboro area. If you looked closely, at that map, you saw, it was a combination of Markland Pike and State Road 56 and Cass Union Road and 262. So, no, that is certainly not the, that's a route that we will be looking at, as whether improvements could be made to those roads to provide that improved, access and connectivity. But that was just, it's a route that we're going to use kind of as a comparison point during this process. So that was the limits of the purpose of that route.
Excellent. Had some people asking about the previous study, and we will make sure that you are able to link to that. You can currently do a search and find that study, but we want to make sure that it's easy for you to find. So we are happy to add that link to the website. Look for that information coming in an FAQ, and we'll have it posted. But there were some questions, Dan, regarding that previous study, with some folks asking, the information has been gathered, it's there, but I think it's also important to say that study was in 2003. So that was 20 years ago. So there's some information to use, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. I mean, we want to learn from what was studied back then, but I should also, point out that that was really a feasibility study. If folks look at that report, you'll see that, that involved what we call a lot of secondary source data. That's data that's already out there and been, kind of in databases and government agency systems today. It did not include any detailed field surveys, and that's something that we are going to get into in this project. Once we get to that point of having, screened out some of those initial alignments, we'll be going out and doing those detailed field surveys. Members of our project team will be doing those surveys within those corridors that we've narrowed the list to. And those surveys will include lots of things. It includes environmental resources like streams and wetlands and forested areas. We're looking for, habitat areas that might, contain endangered species, those sorts of things. We're also looking for community resources. In addition, we know where, today through existing data sources, we know where, most of the, we know where schools and churches and those sorts of things are, but we'll also be going out and looking in the corridor for all those things. So there's a lot of things we're going to be, surveying for. But yes, that work that was done in 2003, yeah, it's important. It gathered a lot of good data, but it's also, is limited, as well as now it's 20 plus years old. So that's why we need to really kind of start with a fresh set of eyes now.
And we said that we would answer the questions that we could provide a pretty quick answer to. And this one I think is very quick. They wanted to know our role, Dan. So is Parsons contracted through final design? And that's a no.
No.
So we're here for the preliminary design and environmental analysis.
Yeah. Our team has been, hired by NDOT to lead this process that's covered by, it's called the NEPA process. It's that decision-making process. And to be honest, our contract is only up through that selected alternative point. So what NDOT decides to do after that, will be a decision that they make at that time.
And I did not hear you say this term, Dan, so I don't know in reference to, but it may jog it and it could be a quick explainer for you. We did have somebody, if you referenced induced traffic, which I don't remember hearing from you, but they were wondering what we meant by that.
Yeah, I don't think we said that.
I didn't hear it, but I also,
but,
if we didn't, I wanted to clear up, or if we did, I wanted
sure.
to give a chance to explain.
No, and the idea of induced traffic is the recognition that, you know, sometimes when a new road is provided or improvement to an existing road, that may in itself attract more trips. And you know, one of the things that we'll be doing as part of this process is a lot of traffic model work. The state has a statewide traffic model that looks, you know, includes all the major roads in the whole state, and we've done a lot of additional work to add all the road, you know, all those collector kind of roads in this project area, as well as gather additional data sources that are out there in terms of traffic volumes and patterns. And ultimately, what we're going to do is, you know, we're going to be looking at the existing network and see where trips are going. And then as we start to look at these possible options for routes, the model will give us an idea of how trips might change. You know, what trips might be attracted to this based on, and this model, I should say, looks out over a horizon of 20 years. So we'd be looking at something like 2045 traffic. And obviously that, you know, nobody has a perfect crystal ball, but, you know, that model takes into account, projected growth in employment and development and, you know, residential properties, all of those things that, you know, get fed into this model so that we've got an idea of where traffic is going now, as well as where it would go in the future with and without the project.
We had somebody who was interested. We talked about our community advisory committee, our CAC that we met with. They wanted to know if we could share that information on who serves it on that CAC. Is it secret? No, it's not a secret. So it's a good discussion. So we're happy to share, you know, who those representatives, what groups and organizations they're representing. We're actually, we will have a summary from that meeting that will be posted on the website as well. So you'll see a placeholder for it now under project documents. We just don't have that produced yet, but we will have that completed and that will be posted as well. And the same individual said that they knew people who might be interested in serving on the CAC or the EJ working group. You can share that through the chat or any of the project office contact channels, either the email, phone, whatever works for you. Please feel free to share that information with us. We are meeting with these groups at key milestones, and we welcome more folks to take part in that process. Let's see, I'm trying to see if there are other things that are that we can touch on before I know there are a lot of comments, and again, we appreciate the time. We are taking a look at those comments, and we will share those with the entire project team. I know the people who are joining us this evening are reviewing those comments, and we will capture those in their entirety and share them with the entire project team. Let's see here. Dan, I think because there were a couple of questions, and I don't think that I think just for guidance, when we're asking people to complete the comment form and we're asking people to draw lines, really what we're hoping to do from that is just gain more information. So we're not asking anybody to try to, you know, plan a direct route or anything like that. I mean, we're looking for some guidance and thoughts from the public, and we want to give them an opportunity to weigh in. So if you want to just talk a little bit more about the purpose of that exercise, since that continues for the next couple of weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what folks should think about as they look at that map and think about what, you know, where a route might go, you know, think about, you know, we want your, you know, input about, you know, maybe there are those existing routes that make sense, but also think about, you know, what are those connections that you feel are most needed? I mean, a great example is, I had a number of conversations about this last night at the maps. You know, we've got a fairly fixed starting point. You know, the Markland Dam Bridge is a entry into Indiana, and but as you head north from there, you know, as you saw in the project area, you know, we've got a section of US 50 from, you know, Versailles over to Aurora that we're looking at as possible connection points. And obviously those, you know, if you can imagine a route going more towards one end or the other, might serve different trips. And so that's an example of where, you know, one of the things we want from folks is, what are those what is that connection that's most needed in this project area? Is it something closer to Versailles, or is it something closer to Aurora, or maybe something in the middle?
Excellent. And we saw Paul had some issues reaching the website, but I think there was just a typo there. So I haven't had any problems at all accessing that. So please do try again, Paul. I saw that Barry provided the link for you. It is
Yeah.
link101corridor.com. That's corridor.com. It is live. You shouldn't have any problem accessing that. So please let us know if you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. And I think maybe there's a clarification on, if you did leave a question in the chat, that I believe that by registering, we've got an email address that we can respond to. Is that right, Mindy?
Yes, but it's a great point to
Oh.
raise, Dan, that if people, sometimes when you register for things, and I get it, you use one email for something, you use one email for something else. So if that's a fine address to get you a response, great. We don't need anything else. But if you are showing up as a guest, if we don't have your information, if you want to supply, if you want to make sure that we are responding to you with a direct answer to your comment or question, please do provide in chat your preferred contact information. And so we will also, to that end, keep this chat open through the 7 o'clock hour, because we want to give you opportunity to share that information that we've asked for. If you want to reiterate a question and connect it with contact information, please do so. But again, this is one channel. The chat is one function, one channel. We have that comment period associated with the public meetings open through the 17th of February. So those 7 locations that we talked about. The meeting materials will be located there through the 17th. We'll come through that next Monday and we'll gather all of the boxes with comment forms, and we'll be reviewing those. We'll be taking all of those comment forms that have been dropped off at the project office, phone calls, emails that we received during that time as well. Dan, we had a couple of people asking some additional questions about Parsons and the role and where we are in this study. So I think that we have all of those recorded there. I think that you covered that pretty thoroughly, but if there's anything else to add on that front, I think that you have covered.
Yeah, we have a pretty, we have a mission to get the project through that environmental process and get to that selected alternative. And at that point, it's up to NDOT how to proceed.
Perfect. Excellent. Paul, it looks like Paul is possibly, he was trying to find the additional study and he's having issues there with finding the 2003 study. We will make sure that we link to that on the website, and we'll make sure that that's easy for folks to find. Again, I anticipate that being included. When we have these meetings, one of the good things about that is, we listen to what are some of the common thoughts, threads, things that we need to respond to. And that's when we have already a pretty lengthy list of FAQs. But if there are questions that came up, and there were a couple of areas that we're hearing several questions on, we'll add to our list of FAQs, and we'll make sure that information is available on the website. So we did hear from people who wanted to know about that study. So we'll make sure that we get that posted and add that into our FAQs. And other than that, the things that I would like to leave the group with, that February 17th comment period, those 7 locations where we have meeting materials, and we'll actually be putting out another release. So if you sign up for our project updates, which I encourage you to do so, come this Monday, you're going to get a reminder and a listing of where those locations are. We'll send out another reminder during that comment period. You're not going to get bombarded by emails or texts, but during key moments in the project, you will be receiving information. So it is a good resource if you're interested in the project to follow us. And with that, I think that we'll thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for all of the comments and the questions. I hope that you were able to take away more information on where we are with the process. And if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's why we're here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And with that, we will turn off our cameras and microphones, but we will keep this open through 7 o'clock to give folks time to put in any final comments, contact information in the chat. Thank you very much and have a good evening. I'm going to pop on and just do a final good evening to everybody, and thank you very much. And I did put it in the chat, but I know some people don't follow that. If you do have additional comments, questions, any of the project channels, if you're having any problems finding us at all, website has all of those channels listed, and you'll be able to have a quick connection to us there. And we, again, I should mention, and I failed to, the project office opens this Monday. That will be the first Monday it's open, on the 23rd. So feel free to join us then. And again, thank you very much and have a great evening. We appreciate your time.